My son spent Christmas with his father and his father's wealthy new wife. I spent it alone in my drafty little auto bay, hands cracked from cold, knuckles stained with grease. When he finally came back, I tried to sound normal. "So, did you have fun?" He didn't answer right away. He stood in the doorway like he'd stepped into a place he didn't recognize. Like the oil-stained floor and the old heater in the corner were embarrassing him just by existing. Then he looked at me, and his face tightened with something that felt like disgust. "I'm moving in with Dad," he said. "I need a real parent, not someone stuck in this dump forever." The words hit so hard I forgot to breathe. I stood there with a rag in my hand, wiping at a stain that wasn't even on my skin. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. He didn't soften, didn't even pretend it hurt him to say it. Outside, a car door closed with that heavy, perfect sound expensive cars make, like money itself snapping shut. I blinked hard and forced a smile that didn't belong on my face. "Eli, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." He adjusted the strap of his designer bag, the kind a teenager shouldn't even know the name of. "Dad and Marin actually care about my future. They don't just survive." Marin, that was his stepmother now. Marin Vale, corporate darling, tech executive, the kind of woman who spoke on stages with her name glowing behind her in giant letters. And me? I was the woman who fixed transmissions for $48 an hour and kept a tiny apartment above the shop because rent in Portland didn't care about pride. "It was Christmas," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I missed you." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You missed me? Mom, you had frozen noodles and a broken radio playing old songs. Marin had a private chef, a string quartet. They were talking about internships and travel and real opportunities. Not this." He waved his hand around the bay, like it smelled worse than it did. I swallowed, slow, careful, like any sudden movement might crack the whole moment wider. "Eli," I said, "I did this so I could stay close to you." He rolled his eyes as if that was the most pathetic thing he'd ever heard. "You always say that, but look at you." He looked me up and down, not like a son, like a stranger judging a stranger. "I'm embarrassed," he said quietly, as if that made it kinder. "I'm tired of lying when people ask what you do. I'm tired of pretending this is enough." A beat of silence. The heater hummed. Somewhere in the back, a drip hit a pan in a slow, steady rhythm. "I'll come back next week for the rest of my stuff," he added. "Don't make it weird." Then he turned and walked away, footsteps crisp and final. I didn't chase him. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at the workbench where a framed photo sat under a layer of dust. Eli, at 9 years old, grinning on my shoulders at the Saturday market, yelling that his mom was the strongest person alive. Back then, I was his hero. That night, after I locked up the bay and climbed the stairs to the apartment, I opened my old laptop and stared at an email I'd refused 6 times. And this time, my finger hovered over reply, because if Eli wanted a real parent so badly, I was about to show him who I really was. I hit one key on that keyboard and set off a chain of events Eli never saw coming. The email had been sitting there for years, resurfacing every few months like it refused to give up on me. Subject: final offer, lead systems architect, Helix Dynamics, Zurich. I'd memorized it. The wording, the salary, the promise. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt heavier than silence. Not peaceful, empty. The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts too clearly. On the kitchen counter sat a half-finished cup of coffee, gone cold. I hadn't even noticed when I stopped drinking it. 6 times. That's how many times I'd turned this job down. Helix Dynamics wasn't just any company. They were leaders in clean propulsion systems. My designs, my models, my math, all of it had started there, scribbled in notebooks when Eli was still small enough to fall asleep on my chest while I worked nights. The offer wasn't subtle. Base salary, $410,000 a year, housing stipend included, full relocation support, equity. Every time I'd said no, I'd written myself the same note and attached it to the email. Can't leave Eli. He needs me here. Being present matters more. I'd believed that with everything I had. I stared at the screen again. Tonight, that belief felt different. I thought about Eli's face in the doorway. The way he looked around the shop, like it was something that had failed him personally. The way he said he needed a real parent. I rubbed my hands together. They still smelled faintly of oil, no matter how many times I washed them. You did this to stay close, I said out loud, as if the walls needed reminding. I stood up and walked into the bedroom closet, pushed aside old jackets, winter boots. A box fell forward with a dull thud. I froze. I knew that box. I pulled it out and sat on the floor. The tape had yellowed with age. Inside were things I never let myself look at for long. Certificates, patent drafts, letters with corporate logos printed so cleanly they looked unreal in my hands. One letter caught my eye. Aurora Mobility Group offer. Declined. 2019 salary. $365,000. Another from Novatech Engines. Another from Solara Labs. I hadn't just chosen one child over one job. I'd chosen Eli over an entire version of myself. I closed the box and pressed my palms flat against the lid. For a moment, guilt twisted in my chest. Then anger followed. Not sharp, not explosive, quiet, controlled. Eli was 24, educated, independent. He'd looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't enough. I walked back to the laptop. The email waited patiently, like it always had. I clicked reply. My fingers hovered. I didn't feel dramatic. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt done hiding. Dr. Lena Weiss, I accept the position. Please let me know next steps and start date. I signed my name. I stared at the message one last time. Then I hit send. The email vanished. Just like that. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I closed the laptop and sat there, listening to the heater click on and off. Tomorrow, everything would change, and Eli had no idea what he'd just set in motion. What I didn't know yet was that my decision wouldn't just change my life. It would come crashing straight back into his. The confirmation came faster than I expected. Less than 12 hours after I sent the email, my phone buzzed while I was tightening a bolt under the hood of an old Subaru. I ignored it at first. Work had always come before distractions. But when it buzzed again, longer this time, something told me not to. I wiped my hands on my jeans and checked the screen. Helix Dynamics, Zurich. Start date, March 4th. I stared at it until the letters blurred. March 4th. That gave me 6 weeks. 6 weeks to close the shop. 6 weeks to pack my life into boxes. 6 weeks to leave behind the version of myself everyone thought they understood. I exhaled slowly and went back to work. The engine didn't care about my emotions. It needed focus, torque specs, precision. Funny thing was, for the first time in years, my hands felt steady. That night, after I locked up, I walked upstairs and opened a drawer I hadn't touched since Eli left. Inside were small things I'd saved without meaning to. His first library card, a cracked phone from his teenage years, a folded permission slip I'd signed for a school trip he barely remembered. I took them out one by one, laid them on the table. I wasn't running away. I was moving forward. The next morning, I put up a small sign on the shop door. Auto bay closed. Thank you for 17 years. No explanation, no drama. Customers stopped by anyway. Some were angry. Some were confused. Most were just quiet. You okay? Asked Nora, a delivery driver who'd been coming by for years. I nodded. Yeah, just time. She didn't push. People who work with their hands know when something ends. A week later, Eli came back. Not with an apology, not with hesitation, with boxes. He didn't look at me as he carried his things downstairs. His phone buzzed constantly. Messages from a life I apparently didn't belong to. I'll be quick, he said. Dad's waiting outside. I leaned against the counter. You don't have to rush. He paused, then shrugged. Marin hates being late. That name again. I watched him tape up the last box. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. I'm closing the shop, I said casually. He stopped. Just for a second. Closing? He repeated. Why? I met his eyes. I got a job offer. His brow furrowed. Here? No, he scoffed. Figures. I'm moving to Switzerland. That did it. He laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You? Switzerland? Doing what? Fixing tractors? I didn't correct him. I leave in 6 weeks, I added. For the first time since he walked in, he looked unsettled. Well, he said after a moment, lifting the box again. Good luck with that. He carried the last box out without another word. From the window, I watched him load it into a black sedan. His father didn't get out. Marin didn't either. The car pulled away. I stood there alone, the apartment echoing. That night, I packed quietly. And as I folded clothes into a suitcase, I had no idea that my silence was about to be mistaken for abandonment and weaponized against me, because 2 months later, my phone would light up with a message that stopped my heart cold. Zurich didn't ease you in. It hit fast. Clean streets, sharp air, buildings that looked like they'd been designed by people who hated mistakes. By the third week, my days had a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Morning briefings, long whiteboards filled with equations I didn't have to simplify for anyone. People who listened when I spoke. People who asked questions that mattered. They didn't call me ma'am or hey. They called me lead architect. Helix dynamics moved fast. My propulsion model, the one that had lived in notebooks for a decade, was finally being built. Not theoretical, not hypothetical, real. The lab smelled like ozone and clean metal instead of oil and burnt coffee. I worked late, but it didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like alignment. For the first time in a long time, I slept without replaying conversations in my head until the message arrived. It was a Tuesday night. Rain streaked down the apartment windows. I was halfway through reheating soup when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Subject, legal notice, Mercer v. Hale. My stomach dropped. I opened the message with shaking fingers. It was from a law firm back in Oregon. Formal, cold. Every sentence sharp, like it had been sanded down to hurt less. I was being sued. By my son. And by my ex-husband. The claims made my breath catch. Emotional abandonment. Financial neglect. Leaving a dependent adult without support. They were demanding compensation. Backdated support. Legal fees. I read it twice. Then a third time. Eli was 24. He had a degree. He had chosen to leave. He told me he didn't need me. And now they were saying I disappeared. I sat down slowly, phone still in my hand. For a long moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt disbelief. Then it hit. They didn't know. They thought I was still scraping by in a failing shop, still the woman with oil-stained hands and no leverage. To them, this was easy money. I scrolled to the bottom. Court date. 6 weeks out. Location. Multnomah County Courthouse. If I didn't show, they'd win by default. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. Eli, why didn't you even say goodbye? I stared at the words until my vision blurred. Say goodbye? I set the phone down and leaned back, pressing my fingers to my temples. So this was the story now. The mother who chased success and abandoned her child. I stood and walked to the window. The city glowed below, orderly and distant. I picked up the phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years. Maya Chen, attorney at law. We'd gone to grad school together. She'd switched tracks. Corporate law. Sharp. Unforgiving. She answered on the second ring. Don't tell me you finally need a lawyer, she said. I'm being sued, I replied. There was a pause. By who? My son. Her tone changed instantly. Tell me everything. And as I spoke, I realized something unsettling. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a reckoning. And if I went back, the truth wouldn't just defend me. It would dismantle everything Eli thought he knew, because the moment I stepped back into that courtroom, nothing would ever be repairable the same way again. Maya didn't sugarcoat it. They're counting on you being scared, she said over the video call. Her office behind her looked exactly how I remembered. Glass walls, no clutter, everything intentional, or guilty, or broke. I let out a dry laugh. They picked the wrong weakness. She nodded once. Good, because this gets ugly. By the next morning, we were building a case. Not a defensive one, a factual one. Maya asked for everything. Emails, contracts, bank records. Old documents I'd never imagine needing again. She didn't rush me. She didn't interrupt. She just listened and made notes, her pen moving steadily across the page. When I mentioned the job offers I'd turned down, her eyes flicked up. How many? More than I can remember. And why did you refuse them? I didn't hesitate. Because I didn't want Eli growing up without me. She leaned back slowly. That matters. We spent the next week gathering proof, not opinions, not emotions, Evidence. I pulled archived emails from companies that had once chased me relentlessly. Salaries I'd never said out loud. Titles I pretended didn't matter. Maya whistled quietly when she saw the numbers. They have no idea who they're suing, she said. I also sent her bank statements. Years of tuition payments, rent transfers, health insurance coverage that had never lapsed. Receipts for groceries, books, emergency dental work Eli forgot ever needing. I never stopped supporting him, I said. She nodded. Exactly. Then came the witnesses. Maya asked, "Who saw you raise him?" The answer came easily. I called the shop next door to my old bay, Raoul, who'd watched Eli grow up between oil changes and homework sessions. He didn't hesitate. "I'll testify," he said. "That kid had a mom who showed up every day." Next was Mrs. Klein, my former landlord. She remembered every late payment I still made on time. Every year I renewed early because I didn't want to uproot Eli during school. Then came his old debate coach. "Your son was brilliant," she said, "but you were the constant. You never missed a competition." Each call felt like opening a door I'd quietly closed years ago. Maya compiled everything into a single, brutal timeline. It told one story. I stayed. I sacrificed. I didn't disappear. They walked away. 2 weeks before the hearing, Maya called me late. "There's something else," she said. I closed my laptop slowly. "What?" "Your ex-husband's wife, Marin." My jaw tightened. "She's under investigation," Maya continued. "Financial misrepresentation. Her company collapsed last quarter. Assets frozen. Accounts locked." I felt the pieces slide into place. "And Eli?" Maya sighed. "Lost his job. Lost his apartment. He moved back in with his father 2 months ago. So that was it." They weren't angry. They were desperate. "They think you owe them," Maya said quietly. "And they think you're still the woman fixing cars above a shop." I looked around my Zurich apartment. The blueprints on the table. The prototype humming softly in the background. "They're wrong," I said. "Yes," Maya replied. "And in court. We're going to let the truth do the damage." I booked my flight that night. Not because I was afraid. Because I was done being misunderstood. And when Eli finally saw what I'd given up for him, it was already too late to pretend it didn't matter. The plane touched down just after dawn. Portland looked the same from above, gray, damp, familiar in a way that felt almost unreal, after months of clean lines and sharp light. I didn't feel nervous. That surprised me. What I felt was focused. Maya was waiting at the airport. Same sharp blazer, same calm eyes. "You ready?" she asked as we walked to her car. "I didn't come back to hide," I said. She smiled once. "Good answer." We spent the next few days preparing in silence, broken only by strategy. No dramatics, no rehearsed speeches, just truth, organized and ready. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep, not because of fear, because I kept replaying Eli's voice. "Why didn't you even say goodbye?" I had, in my own way. But truth doesn't matter if the other person rewrites it. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. Wooden benches, high ceilings, the kind of place where lies echo longer than people expect. Eli was already there when I walked in. He looked smaller. No designer jacket this time. No confident posture. He avoided my eyes, jaw tight, hands clenched in his lap. Next to him sat his father, calm, detached, like this was just another business inconvenience. Their attorney stood when we entered, expensive suit. Polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. Maya leaned toward me. "Let them talk first." The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. Case called. The accusations came out clean and rehearsed. Abandonment, neglect. A mother who chose ambition over her child. Eli testified first. His voice shook. He talked about feeling left behind, about waking up one day and realizing I was gone, about struggling financially, emotionally. The room felt heavy. When he finished, the judge nodded slowly and turned to me. "Miss Hale," she said, "did you abandon your son?" I stood. "No, Your Honor." Simple, calm. I respected his choice. Maya stood beside me and began laying the foundation. Dates, messages, proof. Texts where Eli told me he didn't need me anymore. Emails where he asked me not to interfere in his life. The judge read quietly. Then came the financial records. Years of payments. No gaps. No lapses. Tuition. Insurance. Rent. Eli's head slowly lifted. Maya didn't rush. Then came the offers, printed, verified, stamped. Salaries that made the courtroom shift. When Maya explained how many times I'd refused them, the judge looked directly at Eli. "Did you know this?" she asked him. He didn't answer. I spoke then. Not loudly, not angrily. I stayed because I believed being present mattered more than prestige, I said. When my son told me I wasn't enough, I stopped hiding. The witnesses followed. Neighbors, coaches, colleagues. Each one filled in a piece of the story I'd never defended before. Finally, Maya called the last witness. A video screen flickered on. My current director from Zurich. He spoke plainly. She is one of the most qualified systems architects in her field. We pursued her for years. She refused. Because of her son. Silence. The judge leaned back. Eli looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw something crack. Because the ruling was about to do more than dismiss a case. It was about to shatter the story Eli had been telling himself for years. The courtroom stayed quiet longer than I expected. The judge didn't rush. She reread documents. She flipped through the binder Maya had prepared. Every page carried years of choices I'd never explained to anyone. Finally, she looked up. "This case," she said slowly, "is not about abandonment." Eli stiffened. "It's about accountability." She adjusted her glasses and looked directly at him. "Mr. Mercer, you were an adult when you chose to leave your mother's home. You stated clearly, in writing, that you did not need her involvement. You rejected her support because it did not align with your expectations." Eli's face drained of color. The judge turned to his father. "And you," she continued, "enabled that rejection while benefiting from the narrative that Miss Hale was incapable." The attorney shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Hale," the judge said, "did not abandon her son. She honored his independence while continuing financial support beyond any legal obligation." She closed the folder. "The court dismisses this case with prejudice." A sharp knock of the gavel. Then one more sentence. "Plaintiffs are ordered to cover the defendant's legal costs." Eli's breath hitched. His father stood abruptly, whispered something to the attorney, and walked out without looking back, just like that. The courtroom emptied slowly. People avoided eye contact. No one wanted to be close to a truth that uncomfortable. I gathered my papers. Eli stood frozen near the aisle. "Mama," he said suddenly. The word felt strange, fragile. I stopped, but didn't turn. "I didn't know," he said, voice breaking. "I swear, I didn't know." I faced him then. "You didn't want to know," I replied calmly. "There's a difference." His shoulders shook. "I was wrong." "Yes," I said, "you were." He took a step closer. Can we talk?" I considered him, the boy I raised, the man who dismissed me. "Not here," I said, "and not today." His face crumpled. "Please, I'm not shutting the door," I said, "but I'm not opening it just because you're scared." Maya waited for me outside. She didn't speak until we reached the steps. "You okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said. That evening I packed again. Same suitcase. Different weight. Eli texted once. "I'm sorry, I didn't understand." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care. Because understanding takes time. The next morning, I boarded a flight back to Zurich. From the window, Portland disappeared beneath clouds. I wasn't running. I was choosing myself. And for the first time, I wondered if Eli would finally learn how to do the same. 6 months later, a message from Eli would appear that I never expected to read, and it would change everything again. 6 months passed without a word. No calls, no apologies, no late-night messages asking for forgiveness. I didn't chase silence anymore. I let it exist. Work filled the space where worry used to live. The prototype moved into live testing. Our team expanded. My name started appearing in places I'd once avoided reading. Industry journals, conference panels, invitations I politely accepted. This time, Zurich became familiar, not home, but solid. One evening, as I stayed late reviewing data, my phone buzzed. Eli, just his name on the screen. I didn't answer right away. I waited until I was alone in my apartment, the city lights blinking softly outside, before opening the message. "Eli, I don't know if you'll read this. I'm not asking for money or help. I just need to say something." I read it twice. Then the next message came through. I've been working at a bike repair shop. It's nothing impressive. I mess things at the lot, but I keep showing up. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Another message. I keep thinking about what you said in court, about choosing presence over prestige. I thought you were making excuses. I see now you were making sacrifices. I sat down slowly. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. I just want you to know I'm trying to learn who I am without hiding behind other people's success. I stared at the screen for a long time. This wasn't desperation. It was humility. I typed back, me. That matters more than you think. The reply came almost instantly. Can I come visit? Not as your son who needs fixing, just as someone who wants to understand. I hesitated, not because I was angry, because trust doesn't rebuild on words alone. I replied carefully, if you come, you'll work, you'll learn, and you won't be protected from failure. A pause. Then, that's what I want. 3 weeks later, Eli stood in the lab wearing borrowed safety glasses that slid down his nose. No designer jacket, no confident smirk, just nervous focus. He asked questions. He listened. He stayed late without being asked. When he failed, he didn't blame anyone. One night, as we walked back toward the tram, he spoke quietly. I thought success was standing next to someone powerful, he said. I didn't realize it was standing on your own. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because watching him learn was louder than any lecture. But what Eli didn't know yet was that his hardest lesson was still ahead, and it would test whether he truly understood what he'd lost. Eli stayed in Zurich longer than planned. At first, he told himself it was temporary, a few weeks, maybe a month, but days turned into routines, and routines turned into habits. He stopped asking when he could leave and started asking what he could learn next. I didn't make it easy for him. I put him on the basics, data entry, equipment checks, long hours shadowing engineers who didn't care who his parents were. When he made mistakes, they corrected him and moved on. No special treatment. One afternoon, he finally cracked. I thought you'd help me more, he said, frustration slipping into his voice. I didn't look up from my screen. I am. That doesn't feel like help. It isn't supposed to, I replied. It's supposed to teach you how to stand when no one is impressed by you. He went quiet after that. 2 weeks later, Helix announced internal restructuring. Budgets tightened. Projects reviewed. Eli overheard the whispers before I told him. Non-essential roles would be cut, internships included. He came to my office late that night, pale. I heard I might be let go, he said. Is that true? I met his eyes. Yes. His voice dropped. Can you stop it? I shook my head. No. The silence between us stretched. So, this is it, he said. I fail again. No, I said. This is where you find out who you are without me fixing it. He left without another word. The next day, the decision came down. His position was terminated. I watched him pack his things, slowly, carefully. No anger this time, just disappointment aimed inward. At the door, he stopped. I understand now, he said quietly. I waited. You stayed when it was hard, he continued. I left when it was uncomfortable. I nodded once. He boarded a train that afternoon. No dramatic goodbye, just a wave. Weeks passed, then months. I heard about Eli through small, indirect ways. He enrolled in night courses, took on 2 jobs, sold his phone to cover rent. He didn't ask me for anything. One evening, a letter arrived at my apartment, handwritten. Inside was a single sentence. I didn't lose you. I lost myself. I'm working on getting that back. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, because some growth needs distance, and some forgiveness needs proof. A year later, Eli would return, not asking for a second chance, but offering something I never expected. A year passed quietly, not the painful kind of quiet, the honest kind. I split my time between Zurich and conference travel. The project matured. The prototype passed final testing. Helix scheduled a public reveal for the following spring. My calendar filled, but my life felt lighter than it had in decades. One afternoon, as I reviewed reports in my office, my assistant knocked. There's someone here to see you, she said. He doesn't have an appointment. I already knew. When Eli stepped inside, he looked different. Thinner, straighter, calmer. No expensive clothes, no borrowed confidence, Just someone who'd learned how to stand without leaning. I didn't want to surprise you, he said, but I was in town. I gestured to the chair. Sit. He did. I'm not here to ask for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted to show you something. He handed me a folder. Inside were schematics. Clean, thoughtful, marked with notes and revisions. I've been working nights, he said, learning, failing, starting over. I studied the pages carefully. They were good, not perfect, but real. This isn't copied, I said. No, he replied. It's mine. I looked up. Why bring it to me? Because, he said quietly, you're the only person I trust to tell me the truth. That landed harder than any apology. You don't owe me approval, I said. You owe yourself effort. He nodded. That's what I'm doing. We walked through the lab together, not as mother and son trying to fix the past, as two people sharing the present. Before he left, he stopped at the door. I used to think being successful meant being seen with the right people, he said. Now I know it means being able to stand alone. I watched him go. Later that night, I opened my journal and wrote one line. Growth doesn't come from being forgiven. It comes from becoming better. And just when I thought the story had settled, Eli made a decision that brought us both full circle. Eli's decision didn't come with drama. No announcement, no big speech, just an email, sent early one morning, while I was halfway through my first cup of coffee. Subject, next step. I opened it slowly. I've been accepted into a cooperative engineering program back home. It's small, underfunded, a lot of work, but it's honest work. I start next month. I leaned back in my chair and let the words settle. He wasn't chasing prestige anymore. He was choosing effort. He arrived in Portland a week before classes began. I flew in 2 days later for a board meeting and extended the trip. We met at a quiet cafe near the river. Neutral ground. I didn't want to assume, he said, stirring his coffee, but I was hoping you might come by sometime. Not to help, just to be there. I can do that, I said. He smiled, small, grateful. Over the next few weeks, I watched him build something fragile, but real. Long nights, calloused hands, frustration he no longer ran from. One evening, he showed up at my hotel unexpectedly. I did something, he said, nervous. What kind of something? I asked. I signed a lease. I raised an eyebrow. That's not usually bad news. It's the old auto bay, he said. The one you closed. I froze. I didn't buy it, he added quickly. I'm renting. It's cheap. Needs work. But I want to turn it into a community repair space. Bikes, tools, teaching kids who can't afford classes. I stared at him. You don't need my permission, I said slowly. I know, he replied. I just wanted you to know I'm not ashamed of where I come from anymore. That night, we stood inside the empty bay. Same concrete floor. Same oil stains that never really came out. Different energy. He turned to me. You didn't fail me, he said. I failed to see you. I didn't correct him. Some realizations need to belong fully to the person having them. On Christmas Eve, 1 year later, that garage would glow again. And this time, the meaning would be different. Christmas Eve came quietly. No orchestra, no expensive lights, no performance of success. Just snow falling in soft, uneven flakes outside the garage windows. The bay smelled like fresh paint and coffee. The old heater was gone, replaced with something that worked without complaining. Tool racks lined the walls. Clean, organized, earned. Eli stood at the workbench, tightening a bolt, completely focused. His hands moved with confidence now, not borrowed skill. This place feels different, I said. He smiled, because it's honest. We finished early that night, locked the doors, turned off the lights one by one. Upstairs, he handed me a mug of hot chocolate, the kind we used to make when he was small. Too much cocoa, too much sugar. I used to think I needed someone impressive, he said quietly. Turns I just needed someone consistent. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the boy who walked out on Christmas anymore. He was someone who had learned the cost of walking away. I'm proud of you, I said. His eyes filled, but he didn't look away this time. Later, after he went to bed, I sat alone for a moment and wrote in my journal, real success isn't being admired, it's being understood. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the garage windows. We opened the doors together. Kids from the neighborhood trickled in, curious, hopeful. Eli knelt beside a bike, explaining something patiently. I watched from the side, not because I needed credit, because I finally understood something I'd gotten wrong for years. Sacrifice only matters if it's seen, and love only heals when it's honest. This story didn't end with wealth or revenge. It ended with understanding, and that was enough. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to be found.